What's good, YouTube? This video is going to be about celibacy. So I got a question from somebody on Instagram. Again, if you want to join this conversation, you can just go to the last post that I put up about asking me questions on Instagram. I think I mentioned like my next 20 videos or something like that. So I'm still going through that list. I don't think I've done 20 videos. I think I did like 12. So here we go. Someone asked me, what are my views on celibacy and the women who wait for it to be official before being intimate? For those of you who are new and haven't dug through enough of the older content, here are my views about celibacy. At least before a relationship is formed, a real relationship, an official relationship, a secure relationship, do it. Celibacy, it's a tool that can be used to give the relationship time to settle and set. It's almost as if you were trying to glue two things together, right? As soon as you apply that glue or epoxy or whatever it is you be trying to bind two things with, there's always what's called a setting time, right? And celibacy allows for that setting time in a relationship. You don't expect two things to hold together as soon as you slap the glue on. No more so should you expect two people to just be together because they just met and have instant chemistry and have great sex. That's not how that works. In fact, you should probably take the sex out of it. So I'm a big supporter of celibacy before an official relationship or the security of a relationship is established, right? The emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, obviously, and then the emotional connection and the emotional intimacy on both sides, not just on the woman's side. So many women tell me they have connections, and it just be them. They're the only ones that's emotional about the bond that's forming. The guy has no connection whatsoever, you know. So I don't want to confuse a connection or one-sided connections with healthy relationships. If you're trying to form a healthy relationship, celibacy is one of your biggest tools to do that because, again, it stretches out the process of getting to know you, and it allows for the setting time required for a guy to actually give a damn about your life and who you are and what you become, right? That matters. Whether or not a person cares about your past, present, and your future, that matters. Most of the time when people meet somebody, you know, you're getting to know them, you're getting familiar, you're trading pleasantries, even flirty, stuff like that. But there's no real time for you to get to know each other and become an important enough person in each other's life when you insert sex a little bit too early sometimes, right? So we have a lot of casual relationships, and then people go off and they have other casual relationships, and everybody's just bumping into each other having casual relationships. But it's partly because less people are celibate, and less people are going through that period and letting those relationships settle into what they would otherwise be as bonds, as partnerships, as teams, right? Because a relationship is that. It's a bond, it's a partnership, it's a friendship, it's a team, with compromise and love and then romance added on, right? But loyalty and things have to first be established. And so celibacy is the best tool that a woman might be able to pull out of her toolbox if she wants to make sure that those things are first established and that those things are obvious. Because a lot of women think, well, if I'm celibate, then he'll just run off. Well, a man who's just running off wasn't looking for any of the things that a relationship offers outside of sex anyway, right? Otherwise, he would stay to figure out if there was more to see here. What I find so funny is that when it comes to sex, sex is the only good or service or payment, what should I say, that people expect to give in the absence of receiving that thing that which they wanted. In no other industry, in no other world is the good or the service given indefinitely in the absence of payment, right? Until the leverage of payment has been given over. You normally can't get a good or service or buy an item at a store. And even if you're on credit, you still have to be paying into that thing continuously. It's like the same time. I don't know you, same time, like Chris Tucker said. There's always an equal and opposite exchange of energy or intent. Like if you go to the store and you want to buy a dress, you don't just borrow the dress, wear it 10 or 12 times, and then return it to the store and say, I really wasn't feeling this dress. I thought I liked it, but I didn't like it, right? But that's how people do with sex. People will have sex 10 or 12 times and then decide they've test driven each other enough. They're cool, right? So you've gotten the good, the service, you've gotten the benefit and you've not went through with the purchase, and then you find a lot of people feeling used and feeling thrown away and discarded. It's because you've given away the many times the good, the service, or the benefit before somebody actually up their payment, and that payment would be attention, affection, consistency, love, real intention, genuine interest, those things. You've already given the sex away, and then you're waiting for payment. You're waiting for payment in the form of those other things that build a relationship. Celibacy is wonderful because it at least allows you to make sure that you would receive those payments from that person, right? It's a credit check for that person, if you will. If a person can't wait on you to, be intimate with them, and they're too impatient to get to know you otherwise, then that already tells you who you're dealing with, what you're dealing with, and that you should probably stop dealing with them. Again, in no other industry are we expected to give everything we have indefinitely and wait for payment whenever it's chosen, whenever that date is chosen by the person. You would never take a job where you worked incessantly and didn't have a pay date. Abstinence is a smart choice. I wish more women would do it. I always try to move my clients toward abstinence, toward a little bit of sexual conservatism until they get to know a person, or until they at least get a hint of a guy's intention. A lot of women are using sex as payment. Again, I asked somebody one time, if you go on a wonderful date with a guy and he pays $100 for dinner, and he pays for a $15 movie ticket, but then he expects you to go home and have sex with him, and you do, who paid for that date? Who really paid for that date? I feel like a lot of women think that these guys are out here paying for the dates, but they're paying for a man's attention, which is almost worse than paying for the date themselves. You're better off getting your wallet out on a date and paying for both of y'all than to pay a man for his his good date etiquette with sex just because you don't want to run him off. You might as well just get your wallet out, because you're paying for that experience. He's not paying. The person who's giving the less important thing, right? The person who leveraged the less. It might take a guy, especially if he's well paid, an hour or a day, or a couple of hours to make that little money he spent on the date. But he can never give you back what you gave him at the end of the night. And while, yes, both people are receiving the act of sex, there's definitely a clear winner as it pertains to whose investment in that activity means more. Anyway, I say all that to say, the balance of power and the leverage of sexuality in a relationship, and controlling that balance of power and the leverage in a relationship is often the difference between getting to know someone and forming something worth talking about and worth considering, versus just screwing a guy for a couple of nights or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then ending up in the relationship game all over again, or ending up in the dating game all over again. I'm a huge supporter of abstinence. I'm a huge supporter of celibacy, for whatever terms you set for yourself. I'm trying to get to a short answer here. I don't believe people should be having sex with their new interests in the absence of emotion, and in the absence of mutual emotion, right? In the absence of mutual intention, right? And so a lot of times the only way you get to that is to wait until both people have reached a place to where they want each other, right? They want each other's humanity. They want each other's energy. It's not test driving or figuring it out or experimenting. They've decided that this is the person I want to connect myself to in a real way. And now we're consummating becoming each other's, or becoming official. That's the safest way for women to operate. I know they don't want to operate. I know they want to do whatever they want to do sometimes. And that's cool. If you're not looking for a relationship, this video is not for you. I don't even know why you clicked on it. Women often ask me, how do you stop a guy from using you? Or how do you spot users? And for the most part, you don't really have to spot a user. A user will present themselves to you by requesting a service that they themselves haven't earned. Most of the time, that's sex or money or something like that. But at the same time, if you're not usable, a user will find another target. And so it's not about guys being users and how dare them. If you stop being a target, if you stop falling for that shit, if you stop being usable, you don't have to worry about users. And the one thing about celibate women is, and abstinent women is, is that they're not usable in those ways to those types of guys, right? So when they meet me and they talk about their relationship issues, a fuck boy might be a problem for some of y'all because y'all get, but most of these women who are keeping it to themselves are having different issues with men, right? And if they do have an issue with a an F boy, it's about, oh well, yeah, another one left. But he didn't waste too much time. He waited 3 weeks and he couldn't take it anymore. He said we weren't having sex. I never heard from him again. Like, they have an issue with those guys, but it's just like getting them to exit. It's not, I feel used, I feel discarded. He made me think it was something that it wasn't. He thought I thought he was going to care about me, and then it's not that. It's not as traumatic. I can take someone just choosing to go away from me. I don't know if I would feel very good about somebody using me for whatever I thought I presented to them and then discarding me, or taking what I had to give and then discarding me. So from a woman's perspective, it would seem like it'd do a lot less damage for you not to screw the guys who end up disappointing you first. So yes, I believe in abstinence. I believe in celibacy, especially before a relationship, of an official relationship. The word consummate means to make a marriage complete by having sexual intercourse. You can consummate a real relationship. You can consummate, true love by doing those same things. But consummating a good date is counterintuitive, and it doesn't necessarily lead to the relationships that people want. So, I think that celibacy is the number one tool in a woman's toolbox. If she wants to at least give herself time to learn a man's character, learn a man's integrity, learn a man's ethics, it's really important to make sure that he's emotionally ready for a relationship. He's emotionally available, that he has the patience, that he has the intention to love. Like, all of those things can be drawn out of him, or push him away based on his relationship with sex and you. So taking sex off the table, you get to measure a man for who he is and what he would be in your life, not the fantasy that you might have of him because you had great sex with him. It's just important to know that abstinence is good. Abstinence should be practiced by every woman looking for a solid relationship. And if so many women stopped screwing these F-boys, we wouldn't have F-boys. They're only doing it because it works. So if you stop doing it, it stops working, you start getting presented with a real relationship opportunity. The value of sex and the value of a good date are completely different, right? The sacrifice of sex and the sacrifice of a good date are completely different. One of these things are not like the other. Dinner, meal, movie, show tickets, basketball game tickets are not equivalent to what happens to a woman when she starts having sex with a man who doesn't love her and then he walks away, right? Your risk is so much higher than the $120 he spent on some tickets, right? Because emotional implications are so much heavier than him just being inconvenienced by having to work another 45 minutes or 2 hours at his job, or 4 hours at his job to get more date tickets to take another woman out next week. He's determined that the price of sex is the price of that date. Abstinence gives you time to measure who the man is. The man behind the myth, the man behind the fantasy, the man behind the potential. All of those things need to be adequately and correctly measured. And if you're not abstinent and you're jumping into bed and you're trying to throw yourself into this romance or this fairy tale because it feels good and it feels right, you do yourself a great disservice. Because ultimately, most of those women who insert the sex before they insert everything else that matters often just get the sex, and it's not a bait and switch at that point. They've just mishandled the transaction. If you go to a store and they let you take a T-shirt out the store and they say, "I'll pay us later, the next time, whenever you want," most people are going to do it, but most people aren't going to return the shirt. Most people aren't going to come back and pay. Most stores would be empty because everything would be taken out of there, but those people are not going to come back and give payment on the back end. That is not how it works. That's why you always have to give tender up front. You always have to give payment up front, cash, currency up front. You always have to pay for what you want up front before you get it. But with sex, women allow guys to take it on credit. And I think that's counterintuitive, obviously. You have to look at love as a transaction. When a man deposits his intent, when he deposits his attention, when he deposits his consistency, right? When he pays in all of those things, emotional bonds and being caring and assertive and a man for you, when he pays in his service, he receives the gift of your love and therefore your sex. But a lot of men just show up, prance around you, they receive the gift of your love and your infatuation, and therefore you give sex hoping to get the gift of their love. That is counterintuitive, and it does not work. On mass scale, it does not work. On small scale, it does not work. It just destroys dating ecosystems because the men get used to getting sex as if they deserve it, or as somehow or another a set of balls makes them superior and therefore entitled to sex. And it becomes culture when everybody's getting a bunch of free sex without the investment of a date. And that's what we have here in the dating ecosystem. So listen, I think I've said enough. Stop screwing guys that don't love you. Be abstinent. Wait for the man to commit to you if you want to give yourself the best chance of not being used and actually getting a good relationship. You're supposed to be testing. You're supposed to be measuring and interviewing men and learning about them. Dating doesn't require sex. It requires an information gathering. So make dating about gathering information and learning about this person to see if they're qualified for the person and the role that you have for them in your life, and vice versa. That's all I got for now. Follow me at KidVic24 on Instagram. I'll get with y'all later.